Oh boy, did that last video not age well? I mean, the information is all correct and I still stand by everything that I have provided in terms of knowledge in the last video, but what didn't age well was me saying, or at least hoping back then, a year ago, that I can help fix a startup for a founder that can't even fix themselves. Ironically, that whole experience is just the motivation that I needed to actually carry on this YouTube channel and create the series of videos that I'm about to create. But to preface all of that, I would just like to say that if you are, once again, a founder or an entrepreneur or in any way, shape, or form a creator, before you go on to hire other people and create something, maybe just make sure that your own life is kind of sorted out, at least a little bit, and you at least know how to use a digital calendar, yeah? And at least are aware and have some skills in terms of digital tools that literally the whole world, at least the whole developed world, currently uses. All right? All right. not to sound mean, not to be judgmental. There's still traditional businesses that can grow and flourish, but it's just, if you're trying to create something in the IT industry, maybe at least have some awareness of the IT industry and at least have some kind of a personal schedule before you go on to interact with employees. Okay? Okay. For those that don't know and are new here, this might be a bit of a random introduction, but basically, what I have been doing thus far is working as a sort of startup architect. So because I'm an architect by education, but I got really, really involved in the business world, I then discovered user experience design, things like that, really got into the IT industry. And for the past, how many has it been now? 4 years, 5 years, I've been kind of helping to manage and structure startups for people. And although it has started with just me doing marketing strategies and easy things like that, like design or UX UI for apps, it just kind of slowly progressed over time into me kind of being a full-on supporter and a backbone for some of the companies that I ended up working with. And all was good until this last startup that I worked for, where, I'm sorry, but the founder was an absolute mess. And we did end up releasing the product because the team were amazing. The IT people, the creatives, the actual engineers, the technicians, everybody was top notch. But that is once again to reiterate, if you as a founder are messed up, even with the best people, the best you can achieve is a mediocre outcome. Because you as a founder are the leader, and the leader is the one that leads others. So if you in your leadership position are in chaos, everybody that you will be leading towards chaos. So once again, sort yourself out first. Oh, and obviously I forgot to actually mention who I am as a person. So hi there, my darling humanoids, androids, reptiloids, asteroids, or whatever way you like to identify yourself. My name is Maria. It's really lovely to meet you here. And in this particular series, I talk about essentially how to be a better entrepreneur, creative, leader, or even just project manager. Just practically, I'm trying to provide you with the most essential tools that you need to prepare to create something good for the world in an effective, efficient, and the most optimal way, to make it as easy as possible for everybody involved, including the team, because oh my god, I'm traumatized by the experience that I had. But back to the topic once again. Some time ago, so now it's been 2 years, I have created a series of free PDF guidebooks / fillable documents that you can get in the link down below. Once again, they're totally free. Just left them there for you. You can go through them, fill them in order to help you once again structure your creative project or startup or whatever it is that you're doing. And now I have decided that instead of just leaving them as documents floating somewhere out there on the web, I'm going to make them into a series of YouTube videos instead, to make them even more easy to digest and even easier to access for people. So the best way to go about this is to obviously download the guidebooks, free down below once again, and fill them in while you're watching this video. But alternatively, you can just literally watch this video, whichever way you like. And so today in particular, I will be going through the guidebook that I have named the New Product Launch Checklist, which is essentially a step-by-step guide on how to do research and prepare to pilot a project of yours. So let's jump right in. So there are 5 key stages to creating a product, which are research and piloting, which I will be once again talking about in this video. And then there is deployment, scaling, and leadership, which I will be discussing in the next videos in the series. And why should you already be thinking about these 5 stages right now before you have even deployed the project? That is in order to properly delegate, define, and find the resources that you will require at every stage. Of course, any of the planning that you do right now at the very, very early stage will not be very, very precise and exact. But by thinking through all of the stages, you will at least have a more or less measure of what will be required of you, of your product, of your project, and of the team that you will be getting involved, so that there's not at least too many surprises along the way. And of course, the guide and this video are made to be universal, so you will have to adjust them to suit your own style and niche of work in order to ensure proper organization and, once again, management. So let's say you have a cool idea of what you would like to do. But before you jump into making a product, we need to make sure that a problem that that product is intended to solve actually exists. So this is where we have to make a hypothesis and then resolve it. Because obviously, under the rules of capitalism, the products that sell are the ones that solve a problem for a customer or a client. So let's go back to your idea and formulate a hypothesis that you have with it. And it is best done with a jobs to be done map that, once again, you can find in the guide. So in the jobs to be done map, what you will outline are the goals of your clients and or customers that you are at least intending to be helping with, the challenges that they currently have in achieving those goals, and then rewrite those assumptions in the format where you imagine that as a customer, you're saying that I need help to do something in order to get something. So essentially it is 2 ways to formulate similar concepts, but from the side of like a distance viewpoint where you're talking about like objective goals and objective challenges, and from kind of the inside the mind of your imaginary client and or customer. So once again, the goals, the challenges of the client and or customer, then what they want help with, so I need help too. And then in order for what to happen, do they need that help? Yeah. So next, after we have written out our assumptions and what we think, we need to formulate what our target audience and users actually are, if you haven't already done so. And the best way to do that is obviously to create the user profiles and the user personas. So the user profiles are essentially the general descriptions of who you think your clients and or users will be. So it will be like people of like this age group, like 24 to like 44 years old, who enjoy these things, who are working and or studying, who don't like these things, and the general most common problems are that and that. And the best way to obviously write about their likes, dislikes, and the problems that they most frequently encounter is to Google or like look in literature for some actual real world statistics of the age group and or population that you're looking to tackle with your product. And then the user persona is essentially where you imagine to take one person of that group of users that you're aiming at and describe them as an individual. And this is done in order for you to be able to better emphasize, to better understand and to have empathy for the people that you're working for. So a user persona would be something like Emily, aged 32 years old who likes going for long walks on the beach, is like a millennial. I think they're millennials. Yeah, who's like a millennial, likes long walks on the beach, works as a manager in a construction company, really struggles with like stress, digestive issues, and blah 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 blah. So essentially, what they like, what they dislike, how they live, what their day is like. Maybe even describe their typical day, especially on the day that they're encountering the problem that your product is trying to resolve, and how they typically go about resolving that problem without your product. But now I have to put an asterisk here that we have just assumed and created an imaginary person called Emily. But what is actually better to do is to, instead of imagining a person, actually find a real person that falls within your user profiles. Or even better, find multiple people that fall within the brackets of your user profiles and go and conduct interviews with them to get real responses from real human beings that actually exist, that could later also be recruited to actually test your product. So it's actually good in terms of marketing as well, if you deeper. And obviously the interviewing process is a whole other subject. So here I'm just going to keep it short and give you some basic tips, which are to keep questions for the interview open. So open questions means questions that you can't just answer as yes or no. So instead of asking something like, do you like roses, which the person can say no or yes to, you would ask something like, if you had to choose a flower that most closely represents love to you, what flower would it be and for what exact reasons? Not the best example, but you get the gist, right? So you're trying to get as much information out of the people that you're interviewing as possible. So obviously before you conduct the interview, you have to also do like a whole planning and preparation stage. And it is probably best that you do some research on how to conduct the best interviews possible before you actually go and conduct them. And then after you have actually conducted the interviews, you need to obviously summarize all of your findings instead of just leaving them as text. There are different maps that you can also create to group the findings that you have discovered. Essentially, also look up the different ways to research your users is what I would say, because there are so many different methodologies out there. And here I can only mention the methods that I have found the most useful. But the essence is, first of all, define the people that you're researching. Second of all, define the information that you need to find from them. Third, find the actual people in the real world. Fourth, prepare to ask them open questions. 5, go and actually ask them the questions. 6, synthesize and summarize the information that you have discovered. And group that information in useful kind of boxes that you can then build your next steps and assumptions on top of. All right? All right. And the next step is why it is actually so useful to find real world individuals and doing interviews with them, right? Is because next we need to estimate the market size for your product. So this is not too easy, but not too difficult either. Essentially, you just need to use the tam sum sum methodology. Love that, love that phrase, tam sum sum, really funny. And this methodology essentially makes you look at the total addressable market, so the general amount of people that actually would fall into your client base. So you could say that those are all the people that fit your client profiles that you have built. Then you kind of filter the massive amount of people by the serviceable market. So essentially the people of the whole group. So like out of all of the people on the planet who are like between 24 and 44 years old, which one of them would realistically actually be serviceable by a company? So like if you are American based, then it is most likely that those people will be like people between the ages of 24 to 44 that are located in like America, Canada, maybe like Europe and Australia. But most likely it won't be like some 26-year-old from like a village in Bangladesh. Yeah, so while the TAM of your market will be like 1 billion people, the SAM will already be only like a few million people, right? So then you filter that even more to the serviceable, obtainable market, which is the SOM. So those are essentially the people that you are even more likely to actually realistically be able to reach. So whereas previously we're looking at all of the people that you're likely to reach eventually, these are the people that you are just like realistically likely to reach. So out of all of those people in the USA, Canada, Australia, and Europe, if your product costs like a certain amount of money and is not like an absolute base necessity for human functioning, but is instead something for like enjoyment or education, most likely your customers would be people from those countries, but from like lower middle to upper classes of society who have like spare money to spend on your product. So that would be your SOM. And then we filter that even more to your early evangelists, which are essentially the very, very first people that will have access that you would like and you think would enjoy and have access to your product. So out of all of those people in all of those countries in the middle and upper classes, it would probably be like your friends, your family, the people that you work with, maybe the people that you come across on like networking events. And yeah, and essentially it's like the very, very first people that are most likely to have access to your product, especially in the first year. Okay, so if you have now assessed the market size and decided that yes, this product is worth pursuing, we need to assess your competitors. And by assessing the competitors, I don't just mean like your direct competitors, so like the companies who are creating the exact same products as you're thinking of creating, especially if you're like, oh, but I'm such an innovator, I'm creating something that has never been created before. No, you have to look at competitors in terms of like anything that is already helping the people, the clients that you're looking to serve, to solve their problems, even without your product. So let's say you have created some product that is innovative, that allows people to like use like air instead of brushing their teeth with a brush. People can like use this little tube to clean their teeth with like air pressure. So besides from looking for competitors that create a similar air cleaning system for teeth, you would also have to research the competitors that are just creating toothbrushes. So any companies like Oral-B and blah, blah, blah that are already solving the problem of people needing to like keep their mouth hygiene up. And essentially why you need to do that is first to better define in your client proposition why the client should change their old ways to the new ways that you're proposing with your product. Why is your product better than the products that they have been using before? Then you need to also analyze the price and monetization model to be able to better assess and analyze how likely are the people that you're targeting actually to switch to your product. And this is actually a funny and not so straightforward one, because just looking at monetization and price doesn't mean that your product necessarily has to be cheaper or more convenient in the monetization price than the other product. Because, for example, if you are creating a product for the luxury sector, cheaper products are not what sells. You might actually want to make your product more expensive in order to make it feel more desirable, obviously with appropriate marketing and stuff like that. But yeah, this is exactly why you need like at least 4 other examples to assess in order to actually be able to define for yourself how, in relation to them, would your product and business need to be positioned in order to actually make it desirable and to potentially lure over some of the customers of those previous products. Then you also need to assess the target audience of those companies in order to also understand if maybe you're missing out on a part of the market that you could potentially also be tackling. And then obviously also look at their features in order to understand, like, is your product actually better? Will your product actually be more convenient? And is it actually something special enough to attract customers? And then that step leads us straight to the value proposition. So after you have analyzed who will be your customers, who will be your clients, what part of the market you're serving, why you're better than the alternatives that your customer and clients have up to date, you create a value proposition of why your product is actually something that people should, can, and will be using. And there are, once again, many different types of the value proposition canvas template. I will just insert one right here, right now. You can pause this video if you like, look at it, think about it, copy it down on like a piece of paper in order to fill it out. But essentially the value proposition canvas talks about what the pains of your client are, what the gains that your clients will have with using your product and or service, what would be the customer jobs, so the things that the customer would have to do in order to get the gains from your product. And then subsequently on the product side, it talks about what are the pain relievers, so the features of your product that are helping the customers and clients relieve the issues that they have, solve the problems that they have. What are the actual products and services that you're providing, and then the gain creators, so the features of your products that actually improve the situation for your clients. And then after the value proposition, we formulate our product vision, which is essentially, instead of looking outwards, outside of the company, we're looking inwards inside of the company, business, and the product that we're creating. This is, once again, the vision. I think it's quite self-explanatory, the vision that we have for the product. So how the actual product will be developing, how it will be selling, at least in our imagination, how we plan for it to grow, through what means, how it might or will improve over time, what reiterations might be in store, how long we might want to keep it out for, how long we might want to provide it, if it's like a service, and so on and so forth. So once again, just essentially fully describe how you see your product and or company working and evolving and manifesting itself into this universe, yeah? And then lastly, for this core research step, we create a prototype. And remember those people that we interviewed in the steps before? Those are, once again, the people that we will need for this prototype. So you will now create a prototype of your product. It doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, while I was doing like app development, some prototyping that we did was literally just like drawing sketches on a piece of paper and then taking the sketches of like the screens of the app to different people that fell within our user group, and then just asking them how easy they thought that the layout of like the wireframe was to understand and navigate, and then working from that prototype further and creating more and more prototypes to give to more and more people to test further and further in more and more detail at pretty much every stage, at every milestone that we had. Prototypes are honestly like one of my favorite things. Like I absolutely love prototypes because they're just the perfect way to test your hypothesis. And then obviously if you have created a prototype of some sort, if it's like a first iteration and you have provided to your audience and your audience didn't understand what to do or had some remarks about the prototype, you just write them all out, maybe like even ask the clients and the users to write a review of what they thought of the prototype, of exactly what the problems were, so that then you can go back, reiterate, and improve on the prototype until you get satisfying enough results to move further in the stages of your development. And the bonus point is that this prototype stage actually allows you to build a relationship with your clients and users. So the people that you have interviewed, although you already kind of know them, most likely they're like your friends or just like people that you're acquainted with, by constantly going to them and talking to them about your prototypes and asking them to participate in the project that you're creating, you're actually getting emotional investment from them as well. And because you're getting them emotionally invested in your project, you're essentially guaranteeing and securing your initial clients that will then most likely, if your product ends up being good, will go and tell other people about it. And that is essentially a sneaky way to also do some marketing for your product. And then straight after the prototyping stage is done and you have a clear view of what your product is actually supposed to be, what exact problems will it be solving with what core features, what are essentially the most important aspects of the product for your clients, that is when you create the MVP, which is the minimum viable product. So it is essentially the most minimal version of a complete product that you're creating. So whereas the prototypes, to differentiate, the prototypes can just be like separate features that you're testing, like small little bits. It can literally just be like the design of like an aesthetic that you are thinking of using for your product's marketing. That could also be a prototype that you're asking people to review. The MVP is actually a more holistic, fully built out, obviously not complete, but just like the minimally built out product as you see it, with a full formulated vision of what problems it will be solving, how it will be solving them, what are the core features, once again, maybe like what are the core design ideas and elements as well. So the MVP is essentially the stage of the product that you will be giving to your early evangelists that once again you have outlined in your market analysis stage. So obviously not all of them will be testing it, but you will essentially have to give the MVP to a larger group of people to get more clear results, even more feedback, in order to then go back and reiterate again and reiterate again. And so as with every iteration, you're getting closer and closer to that final product vision that you had for the full release. It comes time to actually consider your monetization model. So of course you can think about the monetization model at earlier stages as well. Even right now when you don't have an MVP, it is useful to think about the monetization model, but realistically you will be able to fully assess it once you already have people using and testing your product, because then you can also ask those people or estimate in various sneaky ways who would be willing to pay for what and how. So I will once again insert just like a really, really useful map right here. So here we have to write out what are the most important and inherent costs that we have in this business model. So that is essentially a conclusion of all of the analysis that we have done before. So all of the costs that are included for the partners, for the activities, for the resources, for the value propositions, for the customer relationships, channels, segments, blah, 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 blah. So essentially all of the costs that we would have to be paying and would have to maintain and look after and manage. And then we have to write out our revenue streams. So how are we basically intending to cover the said costs, as well as actually make a profit? And this is essentially your last chance to get back to cancel everything if you realize that this project is just unprofitable, in no way is possible to maintain. So if the revenue streams and like how much and how many you would be getting of them cannot cover all of the costs that are required, you would have to rethink your whole business model and come up with potentially a different solution. And so after we have defined an initial revenue model, we are almost ready to launch our first project. Just before we launch, we also have to select the metrics that we will be tracking. So the reason that we need metrics to track is obviously to be able to measure how successful our launch is and whether we actually need to adjust, change, or add additional management instruments to anything. So here you have to select the very, very precise goals for yourself. So what goals are you actually after? Are you at this stage after just getting the word out there? So are you more about getting the views and attention on your project and or product? Or are you already at this stage where you would like to monetize as much as possible? So are you after more money? And then essentially depending on what goals you are chasing at the moment, at this stage of your project, that will be the reason for certain tracking methodologies. So like, if your goal currently is already revenue, then obviously you would be tracking in like revenue. If your goal is attention, then you would be like tracking the views or like the clicks, the conversion rates, and blah, 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 blah. So this is where you would really have to look at your own project, because like I cannot speak universally what the best ways to track a project is. But essentially, we're just looking at what are the objectives that we want to achieve and the metrics that we're looking for that will signify that we have finally achieved them. So the milestones that we're looking for. So that then, guess what? We can go back and reiterate even more. Isn't this fun, guys? Just reiterating and reiterating again and reiterating again? Well, if you don't think it's fun, then maybe you're not built for this. Just being realistic. You have to be prepared to keep reiterating and reiterating again and doing it again and coming back and doing it again and analyzing more and getting more data and doing more. So, I'm just saying it's not too late to go back, because once you get into creating startups, once you get into creating projects that actually have to measure up and that involve people, oh my days, it is just infinite iteration. But I love it. I personally love it. But if you don't love it, maybe it's not for you. So, just think about it a little bit more. But yeah, that's that. For now, we are done. In the next video, we will already get into the initial branding, marketing, and all of those sweet things that there's already so much information out there about. But you know what? Once again, your sweet girl, your sweet little Maria has watched infinite hours of information and research on marketing and branding that I have now taken and summarized into a lovely little step-by-step that I will provide for you, like I have provided for you today, but in the next video. So yeah, stay tuned and I'll see you then once I record and edit all of it. And I hope that you found this useful. And once again, it's not too late to go back. Maybe you need to first sort out your own life to make sure that you're ready for the constant process of reiteration and redesign and research and more research and more research, yeah? So stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay good, do good things for good people, and yeah, all the best. Bye bye.